So picture the ultimate symbol of, 20th century Hollywood glamour. For most of you listening, you're probably seeing the little black dress, the pearls draped perfectly around the neck, maybe the oversized sunglasses.
Right, the whole breakfast at Tiffany's look. The
Yeah.
long cigarette holder.
Exactly. It's this pristine, almost untouchable image of a delicate socialite. But the woman inside that Givenchy armor, she wasn't a delicate socialite at all.
No, not even close.
Right. She was actually a traumatized, battle-hardened resistance fighter who literally survived World War II by eating tulip bulbs.
And that contrast is, well, it's exactly what makes her story so incredibly compelling. I mean, we have this collective cultural memory of Audrey Hepburn, right? The dorm room posters, that aura of effortless grace.
Yeah, the two-dimensional archetype.
Right. It completely reduces her to this symbol of sophistication.
Yeah.
But when you actually dive into the sources, we're talking the UNICEF archives, along with historical biographies like Robert Manson's Dutch Girl and Tom Santapietro's Audrey Hepburn, A Life of Beautiful Uncertainty, you get a staggering picture.
A completely different picture.
Huh.
And that's our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to completely shatter that pristine image.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to track her journey from being a quite literally malnourished spy in the Dutch resistance to becoming an international fashion and film icon.
And we'll look at how she struggled with just massive, crippling self-doubt the entire way.
Right, and ultimately how she repurposed all that early trauma into a fiercely dedicated final chapter as a global humanitarian.
Because to really understand that final chapter, you have to look at the foundation.
Where does it start?
Well, she was born in Brussels in the 1930s. Her mother was a Dutch baroness, and her father was an English banker. So she grew up surrounded by the wealth and privilege of the European aristocracy.
So a pretty comfortable start, superficially.
Superficially, yes. But that privilege fractured very early on.
Right.
Her father abruptly packed his bags and just abandoned the family when she was only 6 years old.
Wow.
Just left. And that's her first real major trauma. It left this profound void and a desperate, lifelong craving for stability and family.
Which we'll see play out later.
Exactly. But the historical backdrop of Europe at the time was, about to eclipse even that personal devastation. Because as World War II erupted, Audrey and her mother found themselves trapped in the Nazi-occupied Netherlands.
And this is where the sources reveal a pretty staggering contradiction. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
It really is.
Because the records document that her parents had actually been early sympathizers with fascist movements, like even recruiting for the British Union of Fascists in the mid-1930s.
Right, and just to be clear, we're just reporting what's in the historical biographies here, not taking any political stance. But yes, the sources are clear on her parents' early political leanings.
Exactly, just laying out the facts from the material. Yet, you have this setup, and just a few years later, their teenage daughter is actively risking her life to fight against that exact fascist ideology.
As an active member of the Dutch resistance, yeah.
So what was the turning point for the family?
According to the biographies, it was brutally personal. Her uncle was executed by the occupying forces in retaliation for an act of sabotage by the resistance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. After that, her mother completely dropped any flirtation with those extreme political ideologies. And young Audrey, she became deeply involved in the underground movement.
And let's look at how she actually did this, because I think people picture a polished Hollywood version of espionage.
Right, James Bond stuff.
Yeah. But she's a teenager. She's taking the underground newspaper, the Orange Krant. She's rolling it up tightly and she's hiding it inside her woolen socks.
Literally walking around with it.
Riding her bicycle right past armed Nazi checkpoints. And she's carrying messages and food deep into the woodlands to keep down Allied pilots alive. I mean, if she gets caught at one of those checkpoints, it's over.
Instantly over. And she also weaponized really the one skill she had been cultivating her whole life, which was dance.
Right, the ballet.
Exactly. She had been rigorously studying ballet, and she began organizing and performing in these illegal, silent ballet shows. They were called Black Evenings, and they held them in private homes to raise money for the resistance.
Wait, silent ballet?
Yeah, silent.
How does that even work?
Well, they called them Black Evenings because every single window had to be completely blacked out, and the audiences, they weren't allowed to make a single sound.
No applause.
No applause at the end, no cheering, barely any music.
Yeah.
Because any noise at all could draw the attention of the occupying forces patrolling the streets right outside.
The tension in those rooms must have been just...
Suffocating. Absolutely suffocating.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. It's like she was forced into this horrific pressure cooker that, on one hand, forged her incredible inner resilience, like a literal steel spine.
Oh, without a doubt.
She's a war hero before she even takes a breath of adult life, but at the same time, this pressure cooker permanently damaged her physical vessel, because then we hit the hunger winter of 1944.
Right, the Hunger Winter. The Nazi blockade of the Western Netherlands basically cut off all fuel and food shipments, which led to mass starvation. I mean, millions were affected by this.
Just a horrific situation.
The average caloric intake dropped to around 500 calories a day. So to survive, the Dutch population resorted to eating whatever they could forage. And for Audrey's family, that meant relying on tulip bulbs.
See, I've always heard that detail, like, oh, Audrey Hepburn ate tulip bulbs, but I never really understood how you even do that. You can't just, like, pull a bulb out of the ground and bite into it, right?
Yeah,
Don't they have natural toxins?
they do, yeah. To make them edible and avoid getting sick from the toxic compounds, they had to carefully boil them or dry them out and mill them into this highly improvised, really gritty flour.
Just to bake a sort of survival bread.
Exactly. But a diet of tulip bulb flour isn't going to sustain a developing teenage body. I mean, it fundamentally alters your endocrine system, your metabolism.
Which explains the lifelong health issues we see her battle later on.
Precisely. By the time the war finally ended, the sources note she was suffering from jaundice, severe anemia, a massive respiratory infection, and edema.
And edema is the swelling, right?
Yes, it's a severe swelling of the limbs. It's specifically caused by extreme protein deficiency. Her weight plummeted to just 94 pounds.
Oh my God, 94 pounds.
Yeah. Her body was literally consuming its own muscle tissue just to keep her vital organs functioning.
So she emerges from the war as this deeply traumatized survivor. But that permanent physical damage, it actually shatters her first great dream, doesn't it?
It does. It completely derails what she wanted to do with her life. Her ultimate dream, the thing she trained for in the dark during those black evenings, was to become a prima ballerina.
Right.
But when she moved to London after the war to study under the renowned Marie Rambert, she got a devastating reality check.
What happened?
Well, Rambert basically told her that at 5'7", she was simply too tall for the classical ballet standards of the time. But more importantly, her physical constitution had been far too compromised by that wartime malnutrition.
Her body just couldn't handle it.
Right. She could never endure the grueling physical demands of a professional ballet career.
I mean, just imagine surviving a world war, nearly starving to death, holding on to this one beautiful dream to keep you going, and then being told your body simply can't do it because of the suffering you endured.
It's heartbreaking.
So she has to pivot. And she does it mostly just to survive financially, right? Her mother is working menial jobs. They need money to live. So Audrey turns to acting.
Yeah, and it starts really small. She works as a chorus girl in West End musicals, picks up a few minor film roles, but then she has this legendary encounter.
Oh, the hotel lobby story.
Yes, she's in a hotel lobby in Monaco, and she happens to be spotted by the famous French author Colette. And Colette takes one look at her and insists that this virtually unknown girl play the lead in the Broadway adaptation of her novel Gigi.
Literally from a hotel lobby to Broadway. And from there, it's just a rocket ship. Director William Wyler sees a screen test, casts her in Roman Holiday, and the trajectory of pop culture changes forever. Which actually brings up one of my favorite anecdotes from these biographies. She's acting opposite Gregory Peck in Roman Holiday, who is, already Hollywood royalty.
Right, massive star.
And Peck realizes immediately during filming that this unknown girl is going to steal the entire movie.
He totally did. He watched her perform, and he actually called his agent to insist that Audrey get equal top billing.
Wow.
Yeah, he wanted her name above the title right alongside his. The studio fought him on it, of course, but he famously told them, I'll look like a big jerk if I don't because she's going to win the Oscar.
And he called it perfectly. I mean, first time out in a major role, she wins the Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and a BAFTA.
Unprecedented.
Then she does Sabrina, Funny Face, The Nun's Story. She becomes the biggest star on the planet. But here's the paradox of Audrey Hepburn that the sources really highlight. Despite the global adoration, despite being heralded as the beauty standard of the decade, she genuinely hated her own reflection.
She really did. She had a shocking lack of vanity, which was rooted in just a very deep, pervasive insecurity. I mean, she called her face square. She thought her nose was too prominent, she felt she was painfully thin, and she genuinely believed she was ugly.
Which sounds completely absurd to us now, right? Like looking at the
It
posters.
sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but it tied directly into a massive case of imposter syndrome regarding her talent. Because you have to remember the context of 1950s Hollywood.
Method acting era.
Exactly. Method acting was taking over. Actors like Marlon Brando and James Dean were famously using the method. They were extensively training at the actor's studio, purposefully digging into their own real-life traumas to evoke emotion on cue.
Right, they were highly trained technicians, like pulling from their past. And Audrey didn't have to dig for trauma, she was drowning in it.
Right.
But because she hadn't gone to acting school, she acted purely on instinct, so she felt like a complete frog surrounded by professionals. The sources say she once admitted her intense drive actually stemmed from underlying feelings of inferiority.
Yeah, she was constantly trying to prove she belonged there.
And understanding that deep insecurity, it completely changes how we should look at her status as a fashion icon. Here's where it gets really interesting. We think of her Givenchy wardrobe as this ultimate statement of high fashion, but the sources suggest it wasn't about fashion at all, was it? It was a psychological shield.
That is a fascinating way to frame it, and honestly, the historical record backs it up entirely.
Yeah.
She literally told Hubert de Givenchy, "I have the feeling to be protected by your suit."
Protected.
Yes. The clothing functioned as a physical and psychological barrier. It was between her vulnerable inner self and that consuming, constant gaze of the public.
So she wasn't playing dress up, she was putting on armor to hide her insecurities.
Exactly.
Especially when playing an extrovert. Like she's a natural, deep introvert, but suddenly she has to play wildly extroverted characters like Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
And if you look at the actual clothes she wore,
Yeah, the high necklines.
right, she favored these high necklines, the boat necks. She chose them specifically to hide her collarbones, which she was deeply insecure about, because they highlighted just how thin she was.
The clean lines of the little black dress weren't just chic, they were a uniform of defense to keep the world at arm's length.
But, while that Givenchy armor effectively protected her from the cameras, it couldn't shield her from the profound personal heartache she experienced behind closed doors.
Which circles right back to that very first childhood wound, her father walking out on her.
Right.
That sudden abandonment created this desperate need to build the stable family she never had. She marries actor Mel Ferrer and later the Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti. But both of those marriages ended in very painful public divorces.
And the drive to create a family was met with just devastating physical roadblocks. For someone who wanted so deeply to be a mother, she suffered 4 miscarriages.
4.
4. And the sources detail how heavily this weighed on her psychologically. She would spend months in bed during pregnancies, absolutely terrified of losing the child.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there because this is something that always confuses me when I read about Hollywood history. She's the biggest star in the world. She has access to the absolute best medical care money can buy in the 1950s and 60s. How is she suffering 4 miscarriages?
It's a crucial question. And it points directly back to the hunger winter.
Really?
Yes. Medical historians analyzing her life suggest that the severe starvation she endured during her formative teenage years permanently damaged her reproductive system and her overall physical resilience.
Wow.
You don't just bounce back from your body consuming its own muscle tissue at age 15. The physiological echoes of that trauma followed her right into adulthood. Add to that the immense psychological pressure of international fame, and her body simply struggled to sustain a pregnancy.
And the coping mechanisms she developed to deal with that stress were intense. We associate her with elegance, but behind the scenes, she was battling severe anxiety with a massive chain-smoking habit.
A huge habit.
We're talking up to 60 cigarettes a day for 5 decades. It was her way of self-soothing in a pressure cooker environment.
And her relationship with food was equally complex. Her co-stars often noted these highly erratic eating habits. She would go to a restaurant, order a massive feast, like everything she wanted off the menu, and then she would take just one single bite of the food.
1 bite. That has to be a trauma response.
It is a textbook manifestation of a complex trauma response. Researchers link this remarkably low body weight, which sometimes dropped to a BMI of 14, directly back to the psychological conditioning of starvation.
So having food, but not eating it.
Right. Having food readily available but being unable or unwilling to consume it is a known long-term response in survivors of severe famine.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think it shows that achieving everything society tells us to want, wealth, beauty, an Oscar, global adoration, and it doesn't magically erase the wiring of our childhood traumas.
No, it doesn't.
The world saw a glamorous movie star, but she was a traumatized survivor just trying to become the mother she desperately wanted to be.
And the beautiful part is she did eventually find that joy.
Right.
She had 2 sons, Sean and Luca. And to protect them, she largely stepped back from the Hollywood machine. She moved to this quiet, walled estate in Switzerland. She found peace in her garden, away from the cameras, just fully immersing herself in motherhood.
But you don't just survive starvation, hide from tanks, and suddenly forget what hunger looks like.
No, you don't.
When she finally had the quiet life she wanted in Switzerland, that survivor's guilt started knocking on the door. How did she go from this peaceful garden retreat to actively seeking out war zones?
Well, her maternal instincts simply couldn't be contained to just her own household. In 1988, she officially became a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador.
Which a lot of celebrities do, right?
They do, and it often means lending a name to a letterhead or cutting ribbons at fancy galas.
Yeah.
But Audrey's approach was entirely different,
She was in the trenches.
quite literally. She traveled to some of the most dangerous, heartbreaking war zones on Earth. She went to Ethiopia, Sudan, Vietnam, Somalia.
She was right there in the field.
Witnessing starvation and disease firsthand, often facing the threat of bombs and bullets, and she gave up to 15 interviews a day to relentlessly draw the world's attention to the logistics of these crises and the human toll they took.
And she was incredibly articulate about it, too. I love that quote from the sources where she says, "I don't believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility."
It's powerful.
She also said, "If you deny childhood, you deny life." She knew exactly what it meant to have a childhood stolen by war.
Exactly. It's the profound poetry of her life coming full circle. Because you have to remember, she was personally saved by UNICEF aid workers in 1945.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were the ones who brought her condensed milk and chocolate right after the liberation of the Netherlands when she was near death. Decades later, she was the one flying into the desert to deliver food to starving children.
But throwing herself into these war zones took a devastating physical toll on her.
It really did. In 1992, shortly after returning from an incredibly harrowing trip to Somalia, a place she described as an apocalyptic nightmare, she began suffering from severe abdominal pain.
And what was it?
She was diagnosed with pseudomyxoma It's a very rare and aggressive form of abdominal cancer.
And the medical researchers in our sources point to a heartbreaking link here.
Yeah.
Can you explain how her past played into this diagnosis?
Right, so the theory revolves around her severely compromised immune system. Malnutrition during those critical developmental years like the hunger winter, it permanently alters cellular function and your immune response.
It changes your biology.
Exactly. Now combine that foundational damage with 50 years of heavy chain smoking, which constantly introduces carcinogens while further suppressing immune function.
It's a deadly combination.
It is. The medical theory is that the very traumas she survived in her youth biologically paved the way, creating an environment where this rare cancer could take hold.
She passed away at her home in Switzerland in January 1993 at just 63 years old. And I read she had to return home from the hospital in Los Angeles on a private jet filled with flowers sent by a friend because she was too ill to fly commercially.
Surrounded by her family at the end, yes.
Just think about the arc of this woman's life for a second. She starts her life hiding from military tanks in the Netherlands, starving, doing whatever she can to defeat fascism, and she ends her working life flying into war-torn Somalia, surrounded by warlords, doing whatever she can to defeat famine.
It's incredible.
She didn't escape the trauma of her youth. She repurposed it into a weapon for empathy.
She really took the darkest parts of her life, the war, the starvation, abandonment, the crippling self-doubt, and she transformed them into a legacy of radical compassion. She didn't let her suffering harden her into bitterness. She let it break her open to the suffering of the world.
And I think that's the real truth hiding behind the posters. For everyone listening, true grace isn't about looking perfect in a black dress. It's not about the pearls or the sunglasses. True grace is about holding on to your humanity when the world actively tries to take it away from you.
Absolutely.
It's about using your own scars to recognize the pain in others and then actually doing something about it.
You know, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah.
It is a profound historical irony that the severe starvation she suffered to defeat fascism may have planted the biological seeds of the cancer that eventually took her life.
Yeah.
But consider this. If our deepest wounds inevitably dictate our end, Isn't there something magnificent in choosing to spend the time in between, healing that exact same wound in others?
Wow. That is a thought that will definitely stick with me. So the next time you picture the ultimate symbol of 20th century elegance, the next time you see that poster, the little black dress and the cigarette holder, look past the Givenchy armor.
Look at the woman inside.
See the resistance fighter. See the survivor. See the battle-hardened badass who fed the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Take care.